Welcome back to the Start and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and this is the place where we're speaking with people who are starting and scaling tech businesses. We're talking with founders, investors, and everyone in between. This week, I sit down with Ed Abis, the CEO over at Dizplai, and we discuss everything from the democratization of content creation, getting used to trying things out, how they're helping their audience direct the narrative, and where to start when winning business.
There's always a different way and a better way of doing things, and just because we did something before it doesn't work doesn't mean we can't do it in a different way, or someone can't have a better idea to do that particular thing and do it differently. So
I hope you enjoy the episode. So Ed, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're only around the corner, so it was a pretty easy commute.
A very easy walk, yeah, absolutely.
So look, I always like to start these podcasts off with a question that's quite deep. Who is Ed Abis?
Wow. As we've just been discussing, very chatty man in a lot of ways. Look, upbeat, positive, never see anything too difficult, really. I'm always trying to find a solution. And hopefully, I see myself as trying to bring everyone along with me and give them the opportunities that I've been lucky enough to get from other people as I've gone through my career.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, we'll dive a little bit more into that soon. I did give you a bit of prep and said I was going to ask you to draw something. I don't know if you read it fully, but you weren't always the founder, the CEO over at Dizplai. Yeah. And our vision here at Tact is to, create a world where everyone gets their dream job.
Okay.
Could you draw what you wanted to be when you were growing up?
Oh God, that's really, really easy.
Yeah. Were you good at drawing growing up?
Yeah, but I've got worse as I've got older.
Okay, good. Yeah.
That.
I can definitely see where this is going.
Yeah. There we go.
Nice.
God, this is terrible.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic. Wow.
There we go. Some hands there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna take a wild guess. Footballer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Never really good enough. But totally passionate. Dreamt about it all the time. Played a lot as a kid. Literally played more hours than there were available in a day. Whether it was at school, went through more pairs of shoes than my mum could afford. Always wanted to be a footballer. I was always pretty fast, but never probably big enough or strong enough. Prolific goal scorer at primary school level. Got hard as I got to high school level, and then realised that everyone was actually better than me. Always wanted to be that, and big Burnley Football Club fan, so the dream was to play for Burnley. Never quite made it, so I hung up my boots a few years ago. I'm now formally retired. I just can't do it anymore. That was always the dream, and I guess second best was, being lucky enough to be able to get a job working for Burnley, which was in a lot of ways it was kind of I felt like I'd done it, but just not in the linear fashion that I was hoping to do it, really.
Yeah, and then that kind of, and I segue into asking, I guess, how you got to where you are now. Yeah. CEO over at Dizplai. What was the journey?
Yeah, long and winding in a lot of ways. So I'm half Italian, although no one would ever realise with my accent. So my mum is from the Burnley area, but my father's from Sardinia. Mum and dad met in Milan years ago, and then obviously I popped along. And it was one of those that academically wasn't brilliant at school. I was looking through my school reports the other day, and it was really applies himself, really enthusiastic, but talks too much on any report I ever had. So this is obviously not difficult for me to do right now. And it was one of those that I just wanted to get school out of the way. I'd never grown up with my father. Wanted to go and move and go and live in Sardinia. Totally different to growing up in sort of the Burnley area. Did that when I was 18. Did a year of just sort of learning the language because I knew it a little bit, but not brilliantly. And then I did a year in the Italian Army National Service because I was born in Italy, and because I lived there, I had to do it. So yeah, a year in the Italian Army. Whoa. And then I did a few jobs, family jobs, worked in my auntie's pizzeria and my uncle's cake shop. And then I got a job working for an internet service provider in Sardinia when the internet was just starting to become a thing.
So you lived in Sardinia for quite some time then?
I lived there 3 years. No, I just did a lot in a relatively short space of time. As anyone would tell you, that's just me in a lot of ways.
And you're in the army.
I did a year in the army, yeah. So I ended up becoming corporal in the Italian army. And my job was, I was a driver, so I got my HGV licenses, driving, soldiers around in trucks. I was in the engineers, so we were building Bailey bridges, we were building scaffolding for events, we were laying mines. That year was interesting and exciting because there's lots of different things that we did, and we were involved in a lot of elements that keeps an army moving. But yeah, it was one of those things, kind of like, look, it's an experience, do it, and still stay in touch with one or two of the guys from back then, 20 odd years ago when I did it. Left the army, and then it's like, right, what do I do now? And there was just this internet service provider, as I said, the equivalent of BT, but in Italy, Telecom Italia Net. And they were looking for English speakers. It was a call centre. Just one, because there's so many expats in Italy, and we were going back now 20 odd years ago. Applied for the job, they gave me the job straight away. And at first it was just on the phone lines, calls coming in, and you're just talking people through what the internet packages were. I mean, if anyone can remember, these are days of dial-up internet, so all the screeching noises. Within a relatively short space of time, they said, you're doing really, really well this. Do you want to go move on to our technical help desk, where we were physically, from memory, telling people how to set up their computers to get on the internet back then with dial-up, so TCP and all those kind of things, which is, I feel like I should know more about it than I do right now, but back in that day, did that, like I said, and anyone that would call in that was English, they'd just put it straight through to me. So I'd have expats who would call me up just for a chat, because they knew I was on the other end of the line. Did that for a period of time, then figured, Sardinia's a beautiful place, but not an easy place to work and earn a living. There's not a lot of jobs, and they don't pay very well. And I just figured, look, I've learnt a little bit about the internet here. I wonder if I could go back to England and get a job there. Sent my CV out to every internet company that was in the Burnley area, saying I had this experience right at the start of the internet. And the only one that replied was this web company called Subnet New Media, not around anymore, who were doing Burnley's website. And they went, yeah, come and see us when you come over. Went to see them, gave me a job on the spot. 10 grand a year was on when I started.
Wow.
And basically I was doing Burnley's website. From there, did that for about 6 months. A new general manager came in, a guy called Andrew Watson, who moved in from Everton. It was a little bit of a Jerry Maguire moment. I wrote him a 4-page essay about everything that was wrong with the club as a fan. And I was working at a distance, and he said, right, come and see me when I've started. Went to see him, and he went, look, I like your enthusiasm. Do you want to come and work at the club? So at first I sort of split my time between Subnet and Burnley FC, and that's for about 6 months. He moved me in and started off as commercial assistant, ended up spending sort of 7 years there. I was internet marketing manager, and marketing and media manager. So by the time I left, I was running all the marketing media for Burnley. And then figured, I want to change, moved to London, worked for ITV, commercial services division there, selling sponsorship for Liverpool and Arsenal, Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Sunderland, worked with loads of clubs there. Then moved to Perform, that subsequently became Stats Perform DAZN. Strategic Partnerships Director there, working with global sports federations, advising them how to monetize their content. Throughout this, I've always been a bit of a sneakerhead. Love my Nikes, only Nikes, and I tried and failed on a number of occasions to get a job for Nike. Applied for another job this again when I was at Perform, and got it, and it was running Man United soccer schools. So moved the family up from London to Manchester at a month's notice, and moved based at Old Trafford and running Man United soccer schools for Nike and Manchester United for 3 or 4 years. Adidas came in when Nike came out. The role wasn't going to be the same anymore, so I took redundancy. And then found out about this company, and it's sort of 9 years later now. It was originally called Never.know, a techie middleware, doing some really cool stuff around engagement, but we were always the thing that held things together, and no one really knew who we were in the background. And we've been on a journey ever since, really. I got made MD a couple of years ago and CEO more latterly. That's the sort of the journey so far.
Wow, incredible. I can't believe how much you've done.
Yeah, meandered, really. And I think I've always been very much... If there's a skill that I feel like I've not had, I've always tried to take a job where I could learn it. I always think about that Richard Branson quote that every so often someone regurgitates it on LinkedIn when they say, if someone ever asks you, can you do it, just say yes.
Yeah.
And I've always been very much like that, and luckily I've had more wins than losses down the years, and I feel like it's given me a more rounded experience by taking things on that have been outside of my comfort zone, that at first hand I've not really known how to tackle it. But I've been lucky as well that I've had some great, at the time would have been line managers that have become mentors and made friends through work, who've, in a lot of ways been mentors for me as well. And I'm trying to do the same with our team in the business as well. Not just me, but other members of the team, working with some of the young members of the team that come into the business to hopefully accelerate their development. And hopefully, look, they'll make mistakes. Mistakes are fine. Look, everyone makes mistakes as long as you learn from them. But try and help to make less than the mistakes that maybe I've made and some of my colleagues have made down the years.
Brilliant. And kind of talking about that journey from, as you said, when you started, it was Never.know. Now it's Display, went this rebrand. I guess, how has the business changed from when you started to now, and how would you explain what Display do now to people who don't know?
So the reason for the rebrand was a lot of reasons. Like a lot of people do rebrands, change the narrative. Yeah. As simple as that. We were known as a tech middleware, and we wanted to transition to be known more as a content and media business. So our whole reason for existing is to take a passive audience to become an engaged audience. And we say we do that through active content. What is active content? Content that solicits the audience to somehow engage with it and do something, to feel like they're part of it, to drive the editorial narrative of the content they're watching. Because if you do that, they're more engaged with it, they'll stay around for longer, they'll do more things that you want them to do. That might drive purchase intention, that might drive lead generation. So we work with a Sky Sports where we've created them an interactive boxing scorecard. So when you watch the boxing on a Saturday night, you can score the fight round by round, and then they bring the fan score on screen, and they call it the viewer's verdict. And it's a comparison against what the judges are saying, and who are often not very right, I think that's the best way of saying it, and what the pundits are saying, but they get a different perspective, and it means that the audience are engaged, and almost like on a different level, you pay real attention to what's going on in the fight because you're scoring it. We work with TNT, and we've been working with them for a number of years now, and with TNT, we help them to turn the UFC, they have the rights to the UFC live weighing shows into something that was a post-produced video that they would put out where it would just be loads of guys and gals going on stage doing what they do to do the weigh-in, to actually a live streamed experience where they've got pundits dialing in, they've got the audience asking questions of the pundits. We've done this graphical experience whereby as the weights are being announced, you can see the graphics change down the left-hand side, turn into more of a broadcast, and it's been so successful now that they put it out on linear TV for TNT as well. But similarly, we work with Mark Goldbridge and the United stand. For anyone who's a Man United fan, or anyone who's not a Man United fan for that matter, actually, because you see memes of Mark all the time. We've been working with him now for 3 or 4 years and been on a journey with him where we've ultimately helped him to sort of change the look and feel of his whole streaming experience so it feels like a high-end broadcast, even though they're a relatively small team. And Mark's getting huge numbers with what he's doing, and he's got a very specific way of making content, and he's been very successful with it as well. And I think people just love the realness of it. So we span tier 1 broadcasters to Mark's certainly a tier 1 YouTube content creator, and everything in between.
What's Mark Goldbridge like in real life? Same?
Yeah, I think ultimately, look, there's the persona of when he makes the content, but from behind the scenes, a pretty normal person like everyone else you'd expect to be, right? Very, very opinionated as you'd expect. But I've been lucky enough to meet lots of people that their sort of media persona is they're probably just way more toned down when they're in public and normal like everyone else. I think you just got to treat them as normal human beings, and you'll always get on way better with them like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I guess, look, you're in the content world. Content and content creation is massive right now, and everyone's not suddenly realising, but starting to realise that that is the way forward in terms of spreading the word about anything. What do you think people get wrong about content creation?
I think people create the content that they think they should be creating or they want to create, rather than actually having a bit of a listen to the audience that they're creating it for to see what they actually want. And I think that's where a lot of YouTube content creators are getting it right. I mean, I've been watching my local barbers, actually, Angry Ginge, gets his hair cut in there as well. The lads were telling me the other day, and I'm not of the age where I would have necessarily been a follower of what Angry Ginge does in terms of content, but it's interesting when you watch the kind of content he's creating, which is gaming content predominantly, and he does some other lifestyle stuff too. It's just him and a load of mates just chatting about the stuff that they're doing. But I think people like the realness of it, and I find often that traditional content creators think that there needs to be a difference between the content that they make and like a YouTube content creator. And actually, I think that the lines are blurring more and more now, because I think audiences are way savvier about what they see and what they expect to see. So I did a post on LinkedIn actually yesterday about what Gary Neville and the team did at Buzz 16 around the overlap. And it's the first time that they'd released the video of the overlap with the behind the scenes. So they started recording when they were still doing makeup and the different guests were walking in. And I think I saw Gary write something that it's the best performing video that they've put out. It's like, yeah, because it's real. So I think create a realness to the content. I think the audiences actually embrace mistakes and don't want it necessarily all to be scripted. Realness for me is key in the content that's being made nowadays, and I think that's the stuff that seems to be really cutting through.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because even this is obviously on a much more toned down level. We released a video of us doing loads of bloopers we did this promotional video when we first started. We all looked a lot younger than we do now, and it's us just like obviously swearing and like, oh, bugger, why did I say that? And that's probably the best performing video. That performed way better than the video we actually put out about the promotional stuff, because it's like real, isn't it? And I think people don't understand that what you might find boring, because it's like your day-to-day. You see these bloggers, don't you, doing the day-to-day thing, and you might think that's really boring to you. To other people, it's really interesting and intriguing. But I don't just quite understand why.
I think it's look, we are getting deep now. I think it's psychology ultimately, and I think younger people now ultimately. Interesting. I think there's two sides to it. I think they like the realness of seeing people's real lives and how they are achieving what they're achieving, and it's the conversation behind the conversation, as we always call it. But also, I think there's an expectation as well, though, that because they've grown up seeing everything packaged brilliantly. I mean, I was lucky enough to sort of grow up when Sky came along and started doing the Premier League, and you see how that's metamorphosed really from when they start to where it is now. But ultimately, Sky transformed sports broadcasting, if not in the UK, but potentially even globally, because of the professionalism that they brought to how that content was being made. People growing up now, or in the last 10 years, that's just the norm. So when they see some content, they still expect it to be packaged and look professional. Because I always say, if it looks crappy, people assume it will be crappy. Yeah. So, but it's the realness. It's behind the scenes. It's the understanding the personality. And I think looking at the overlap from the other day, it's kind of like, yeah, I know who Gary Neville is, but when Gary Neville's on there talking about his Burberry hoodie, and Ian Wright's like reaching over the table and going, well, I think it's a little bit too much that. I don't like how they've done the hood, but I think it would have been a bit more understated if it was here. You start to understand the lifestyle and the culture of what Ian likes and what Gary likes. And lifestyle and culture now is really, really important to people in a way that I'm not sure, it was always important to us, but not like it is now. Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. So realness, authenticity. Absolutely. That's what you got to focus on when creating content. Yeah. You work with some like massive brands. You mentioned a few there, like TNT Sports, for instance. But you also work with creators, right, on an individual basis. Yeah. I guess what's the difference between working with these bigger brands and working with more individual creators? Is there a difference? It's interesting. Yeah, there is. I mean, you'd assume that the bigger brands would have more resources, but often they're time poor, even though they have more resources because they're trying to do more with it. The creators can move a lot faster. And I think that's just, it's the same in business, right? Big organisations often don't move as fast as smaller organisations. And I think that's the difference in it. We also work with football clubs. We work with Manchester City, for instance. And Manchester City do a lot, and you could argue that Manchester City now, because of the new studio complex that they've built, are probably up there with the Tier 1 broadcast in terms of what they're creating. They've just done, for instance, the documentary, The Trouble Winners, for Netflix, and you would assume that's been created by a production company or a media company, not by a football club. So it's amazing to see how people have moved forward, and I think it's that democratization of content production. Obviously, we were talking earlier about the setup you've got here and the kit. And I mean, if you go back a few years, this kit would have been multiple times what it costs now to be able to do this. And I said to you about how good I found the content that you're producing as well, which was different from a lot of other people who I talked to about doing these kind of things. I think there's a democratization certainly, and I think there is a challenge now in the content production world and broadcasting world that the small organisations are able to do if not better job sometimes as the Tier 1 broadcasters. So there's a real challenge going on there. But from our perspective, we treat everyone the same in terms of who we work with. Whether you're a Tier 1 broadcaster or a content creator at a football club, you're working with the same people in the organisation, you're getting the same approach from us, and everyone benefits from the different things that we're learning. Obviously, there's confidential in between that, but the things that we pick up in between, we try and pass to each other so other people can learn from each other too.
I love that term, democratization of content creation. Yeah, because it is more accessible now, isn't it? Yeah, because I think historically, I think with a lot of things, where there's mystery, there's money. And if you don't know how to do something, then obviously, you'd pay a lot of money to get someone to do it for you, whatever. But now, just because of the access to information we have, you could look up, basically, what do I need to start a podcast?
Yeah, look, and no one wants to remember what we went through a couple of years ago, so I'm not even going to mention the name of it. But what I found was interesting in that time is I've spoken to a few people who work in the broadcast technology media world, and they feel like in a lot of ways it accelerated how content was being produced potentially by 5 to 10 years, because you found that there was a traditional approach to the kind of cloud-based remote productions that perhaps traditionalists in the industry, or some traditionalists in the industry, didn't want to move towards because it wasn't the sweet spot for them, wasn't comfortable with them. But then every organisation had to, because we couldn't leave our houses. So what I thought was amazing, watching it almost part of it, but also watching from afar as well, is when you started to see people, celebrities all around the world dialing in from their living rooms and their kitchens, and it was a window into a life that we never see, and it comes back to that realness again. And I think that has stuck with it, and people are still doing that now. And you'll see now, like tier 1 broadcasters will still do Zoom calls and things like that. The quality's better now because they've understood how to do all of that and have a, HD or 4K quality stream to be able to do it, internet connection permitting. But I think that was a bit of an inflection point a couple of years ago, because it meant that the whole industry had to up its game and find new ways of doing things. I know for a fact that Sky created a whole division which was all about remote productions, and they did it when we were literally in lockdown. So they managed to do all of that when everyone was working remotely, and that division still exists now, and ultimately it's brought economies of scale. And from a production perspective, you get all these offshoots then, right? Because it's reduced carbon footprint, because not as many people are having to travel. It's good for people who work in production who have a family life, because perhaps they don't have to go and travel to that place now, because they can do a lot of their jobs remotely. Yeah. So it's had lots of positive benefits as well, and ultimately saves a bit of money as well. So there's things that have come out of it are positive for that sector.
Any negatives?
We talk about creativity quite a lot. I think, we've been talking about this. We are 3 days a week in the office. We were 2 days a week. Obviously, we went to 0 days because obviously everyone went to 0 days, and then we gradually came, and we've got to the point now where we've gone to 3 days in the office, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because we've had some younger, we've just actually hired 4 graduate developers, and we want to make sure that they're exposed to everything we're doing, not just development, but every part of the business. And we said to everyone else, look, let's be in with them together, because ultimately they'll learn faster from all of us. Yeah. But ultimately, I think we found as well with the creative side of what we're doing as well, I think we do things better when we're together. You pick things up when you're together. But also we try to find a balance. Like, we still want people to have the space that, you can work from home as well, and you're not in the office all of the time. So we felt like we just needed a little bit more face time together, and I'm now back to travelling as much as I was doing before, and this is probably the first time I've had a week in Manchester for as long as I can remember. I'd like to do that a little bit less, and I think there is an expectation to travel to meet people, but at the end of the day, right, as humans, we're sociable people. I think we want to be with other people, and I think there's a balance now. But I guess only time will tell.
Overall net positive. I think there was an element of this like pendulum swinging, and it was trying to regulate itself almost. And I think people are getting there now. I mean, we speak to so many companies now that are 4 or 5 days a week on site as standard. And people aren't, if you rang people after COVID with that sort of proposition, they'd be offended, almost like, what, 5 days a week? No chance. It's so normal now.
No, and we had that as well, that at first everyone was like, this is great, work from home all the time. And then slowly but surely, speaking to some of the team, they were like, you know what, it'd be great if we could be in an office. I'm like fed up of being at home.
Going insane.
Yeah, and I found myself in my house as well, like, right, I'm going to work in this room today, that room tomorrow, just because I was like, got on board with this. And I was going out 2-3 times a day for walks just to get out, because I was finding it, I was finding it really claustrophobic being at home as well. So, I when we had those conversations, I sort of felt the pain that they were feeling as well. So, like I said, we've tried to find this balance, and we try to do as many social things as we can in different manners, and obviously Grace is with us in the room right now. They don't always invite me because I'm an older guy in the team, but what has been great as well is that we've tried to sort of balance in terms of gender and age in the business as well, because we were at the older end, and we wanted to try and bring new blood in, and hopefully, like I said, teach them a lot of the good things that we've learned, but there's not so many of the bad things that we've learned down the years. But what's been really interesting is seeing the younger people coming in and creating their own culture in the business. That, you know, I think it's me and my management team. We can set a framework of what we expect, and that's what I've found now. I think managing a business, because I've been managed in businesses and I'm now managing a business, is not the top-down thing that it used to be. Like I said, it's our job to set a framework, but ultimately then it's trying to set a good enough framework that everyone can function within it, and then start to create the culture within that. And like I always joke about, like, I feel like a little bit like a proud dad, that when I see that they are doing that, and it doesn't always need me to be there or any of the senior management team, and sometimes we go along, sometimes we don't, but it functions. That's probably one of the proudest things I think over the last couple of years of the business.
Yeah, well, you know what? It was funny. I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I think the first time everyone went, like, not everyone, but some of the office went out without me, and I wasn't invited. I was like, I can't believe they haven't invited me. Yeah. And she said, no, that's mega. You know, everyone's going out, you know, and getting on of their own free will. Yeah. You're not forcing them to do it.
We had the exact same conversation recently, Emma and I, and I was travelling and she was travelling somewhere else, and I remember seeing that they were out, and I'm like, oh, missing that. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy, you know, I have fun when I travel as well too, but yeah, and then actually thinking about it afterwards, like, no, you know what, that's exactly what we want.
Yeah. And display, because I don't think we touched on like where the idea came from, because it's such an amazing idea and it's such a cool business. Where did the original idea for Display come from?
Wow. So originally, like I said, originally the business had a different name 20 odd years ago, originally a Norwegian company. The founder of the business was a software engineer, and this was back in the days of SMS, so before the sort of socials existed, things like that. This idea that TV didn't have to be a one-way communication tool, that actually there were tools available now to be able to make it more interactive. So as a business, we started out doing, it would have been like TV music channels. You know, this concept of keep or kill. You know, you'd schedule a lot of music videos for the day and let the audience decide if they like that music video, if they don't like that music video. And you know, you'd have them both playing for 20 seconds, and people would be texting the short number for the music TV channel to decide if they wanted to keep that whole video and kill the other one. And that really caught on, and for a number of years we did that. We've worked on different projects. I remember we did a companion app for the Tour de France where you could predict who was going to win different stages of the Tour de France before you could even really do that kind of stuff. A lot of the stuff we were doing was back when the technology wasn't even there to do it. So it's like, I've always found this, and that a lot of the time there's no bad ideas, it's just timing. And what we've done is we've stayed the course, stayed around, understood what our sweet spot is. Part of the, like I said, part of the rebrand was like, you know, we've realised that actually we needed to not just tell people what to do, but physically show them what to do and actually do some of it for them as well. And we're doing more and more of that now as well, because we realised that, you know, we're part technology, part marketing, part production, part graphics. We're a number of things all in one space. And often those things are not together in an organisation. I've sat in many a meeting with broadcasters, for instance, where I've arranged a meeting with a broadcaster and I've got a number of people from different departments in the room and they don't know each other. I'm introducing them to each other because they're not always that well connected. That marketing's not always speaking to social not always speaking to production. It's changed now in the last few years, and I think, again, that inflection point of a few years ago has helped that. But I've sat in plenty of those spaces doing that as well. So we are conduits, we're creatives, we're technologists, we're marketeers. We're a bit of everything in that mix. But ultimately, you know, we see content as the conduit for communication. And then once you have that captive audience, there's a lot you can do with it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And another thing you mentioned before, you mentioned that you travel around a lot. I think when we first spoke, you'd been away for everywhere. Right. How do you avoid burnout?
Good question. My mum keeps saying you need to slow down. It's a funny one that. I like to walk. I'd love to run more as well, but my knees don't always hold up. But I want to try and do that a little bit more. I would say I like to sort of chill out watching Burnley, but that's certainly not been the case this season. I'll do things like that. I'll watch football. There's box sets that I like when I travel. I'll watch a lot of those kind of things. I just zone out and try a little bit with that as well. But I don't take long periods of rest time because actually I get bored really easily. But I think it's the little periods of rests here and there that I take where I just try and switch off. I remember coming out of a couple of years ago when we were all at home. My friend had built a bar in his back garden, and he did an amazing job of it. I was like, I'd like to do that too. I've got a bit of space at the bottom of the garden. I'm like, okay, I can help you. I was like, I'm not sure. I've never done anything like that before. He went, you can do that, and spent 9 months doing it. Ended up building this bar that's the whole width of the bottom of my garden. And we don't really, we use it for all sorts of stuff as well. Like, my daughter's had birthday parties in there and stuff like that, but built it from scratch. Never done anything like that before in my life. I've got quite an addictive personality. Once I started doing it, that was it then. I was like, after work, I'd be 4 or 5 hours. Weekends, I'd just be in there from 6 in the morning but it helped me to zone out from everything else. So I like to try and things where I can just sort of totally take my mindset away from what I'm doing. And it actually helps me to think through what my job is as well then. Sure. Weirdly, those sort of things pop into my mind and it's that sort of thinking time. So it's just trying to find those little moments whenever I can to do something a little bit different, that where my sort of mind can just wander a little bit. I don't feel like I ever need masses of time, just bits here and there.
But being kind of like disciplined with the rest.
Try to, because like I said, you can't just, I through choice, I do, like, I wake most mornings at 5 o'clock without an alarm. Just I don't need masses of sleep. And like this morning I was up and sat down and started going through my inbox because I knew today I'd be spending a lot of time with the team and I don't get a chance to do that. And then I get behind and I don't ever like having people waiting on me to make decisions or do things. So yeah, some would say, God, why are you getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning going through emails? Kind of like, yeah, but actually that helps me to sort of manage my own, if we want to call mental health, in terms of once I know that's in order, actually I'm way more relaxed. I can do the things that I need to do on a day-to-day basis. It's when all of those things feel like these loose ends, then I get a little bit, okay, I just need a bit of a time out here. Yeah. So it's just trying to keep on top of things as best I can, but also sometimes realising that I just need to just step back.
Yeah, really good advice. And you enjoy what you do, so...
Yeah, look, I'm lucky, right? It's in a lot of ways, I feel what I do is like a busman's holiday, as it were. Like, I love what I do. Never bored of what I do. Someone said to me, what does a typical day look like? I don't have one. I mean, every day is different. Anyone who works with me knows I say like a change agent. I don't want to appear inconsistent when I say I'm changing things, because we have a consistent what we do, but if anyone says to me that can't be done, all right, we're going to have a crack at that then. It's like I'm all about change for the good, change for the better, and how can we change that up to get to where we need to get to, and not necessarily do everything in a linear fashion. It's never a ABC, I've found, certainly not in our space. There's always a different way and a better way of doing things, and just because we did something before doesn't work doesn't mean we can't do it in a different way, or someone can't have a better idea to do that particular thing and do it differently. So I'm all for that. But yeah, I love the variety of what we do, the different sectors we work in, how we can pivot back and forth.
Okay, brilliant. And you've obviously been at Dizplai for how long? Sorry, 9?
It'll be 9 years in the summer, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been on a journey with them, let's say. Any mistakes that you've made that come to mind?
Yeah, God, loads. Make mistakes all the time. And I think no one ever, we've got really stable and supportive investors as well, who they don't see mistakes as mistakes. They see how we react to something that didn't go quite right and how we pivot to the way we need to do it. And I think it is one of those, it comes from top down, that they're like that with me, I'm like that with the team. It's kind of like, no, if we got something wrong, well, that just means that we've learned how not to do it, so we'll get it right the next time. I don't worry about making mistakes. Probably make far too many mistakes. I always say this all the time. Like, there's a graveyard with headstones full of all the mistakes I've made down the years. But it's just takes to the next step. It's like, don't be afraid of it. I joke with the team sometimes that thankfully we're not brain surgeons, so we're not killing anybody in what we do. It's, what we do is important, and what we do has to be stable for the clients we work with. But if you make a mistake through an honest approach of just trying to do something groundbreaking, cool, engaging, I think most people will forgive you for that, as long as you're honest that, look, we did this, but this is what we've learned from it, and this is how basically we're going to move forward the next time we do it. I've not worked with anyone that has ever not appreciated that. And I think if we work with someone that doesn't appreciate that, we probably shouldn't be working with them. Yeah. And I'm comfortable with us not working with an organisation that would not appreciate that level of honesty from us.
Yeah, and I think especially as a founder, founder and CEO, and CEOs I've spoken to, most of the people tend to have a very similar approach to failures, and that it doesn't matter. It kind of doesn't matter. Like, move on, right? That happened. Don't get too attached or emotionally attached to the mistake. Like, just, okay, done. I figured out how not to do it. Let's move on to the next one. Let's try it again. Oh, failed again. Okay, but then you'll try something out that is, like you said, groundbreaking, that no one's done before, and it works. Yeah. And you get praise for it, right? Because you took that gamble. Yeah. But no one sees all the graveyard of mistakes that you've already made.
It's the swan, isn't it? The legs are going like. I think we'll often do something and go, oh, that worked, right? How do we productize that now, and then work back from that? And I think it's interesting, like you say there, about founders and CEOs, and I've got to know quite a few over the last couple of years, and how when you then do speak to founders and CEOs, how unguarded you become. Mm-hmm. And I've joked a little bit like it's like therapy, because you can talk very openly about the challenges that you're having, and simple things that, in a lot of ways, look, there's nothing wrong with showing vulnerability, I think, to your team, but also your team expects you to be the one that holds it together, that's driving things forward, that has an answer to everything. And like I always say, I'll make decisions all day long. I can't guarantee you'll all be right, but you won't have a decision vacuum. You'll always get an answer on how to progress on that, But I'd love you to make that decision yourself, but I'll help you to get to the point where you feel comfortable making that decision yourself. And these are just things, like I said, I've learnt with working with good line managers down the years, who in a lot of ways have mentored me, and other people I've got to know in different sectors, who in a lot of ways I can count as friends now, that I've just sort of watched how they've done stuff and picked their brains on how they do things. There's no right or wrong way of doing things, but it's just having the bravery just to have a go, I think.
Yeah. And talking about that kind of bravery and going after what you want, and not being afraid to be told no or fail. Big client wins, especially for like a smaller business, can seem quite daunting. You, again, Dizplai, work with some amazing clients. Have you got any advice for people who are trying to figure out how they're going out to market and trying to win clients? Have you got any words of advice?
Yeah. Enthuse and inspire. I think we've realised over the last few years, as we've started making content ourselves, in a lot of ways, what you're doing with this, right, that tells the story. Storytelling is really, really important now. And look, with that phrase, content is king, has always been around now, but I think more than ever, I think you shouldn't ever be selling. We try not to sell. We try to enthuse and inspire about what's possible. We try to always design mechanisms where the people we're speaking to can see themselves doing that particular thing or buying that particular product that we've got, rather than this is this product that does this. It's kind of like, it comes back to a lot of people saying this. Obviously, you've got Simon Sinek, who's written a whole load of books on this. What's your why? And I think that's a big realisation for me over the last couple of years, because look, every day's a school day as far as I'm concerned. I'm always learning. We used to do a lot of the hows and whats. And now we're trying to focus more on, why do we do what we do? What makes us tick and how do we do it are important. But that why, and like I said to you earlier, our why is like, we think that content should be fundamentally more engaging for audiences, and that audiences should be allowed to drive the editorial narrative of that content. That's our why. All the other things that come from that, of which there are a multitude, come out of that, and then you get into the detail, but that's our why.
Brilliant. So find your why.
Find your why.
Okay. Love that. Okay, brilliant. So Dizplai, next kind of 12 to 18 months, what can we expect? Is there anything to keep an eye out for?
Wow. That's a good question. I'm not sure how much I should tell you, really.
We can edit anything naughty out. It's fine.
No. I think we're on that pathway now where we are being involved more and more in terms of how content's also being made. So I can see us playing a bigger part in that as well, because every time we work with a client where we're sort of showing them how to do it, they're asking us more and more, can you do it for us? We recently launched a creative agency as well, and the team are based down in London, because they told me that Shoreditch is the only place a creative agency can be based. No, I'm joking. They're based down there. We are looking to expand out of, I suppose, the sectors we've always traditionally been, but into sort of the brand world and the marketing world as well, enthusing and inspiring agencies and brands to make content themselves and go direct to consumer. So you will see us doing more and more of that. Some of that might involve us creating our own content formats as well, where ultimately we're not doing a half of the brand, almost like a brand comes and sponsors the thing that we've created. So there's a few ideas that we're playing around with at the moment, and a few agencies and brands that we're talking to. We'll expand certainly our technology stack to do more things. Really want to push more around gamifying audiences. This thing that we've done with Sky around the boxing scorecard really got us thinking about that intersection between where an audience can, we call it almost like gamifying the game. So yeah, I'm watching the boxing, I'm watching the football, but I've got a million opinions about what's going on, and I'm probably on WhatsApp chatting to my mates about the game. But ultimately try and connect that content that I'm consuming with some kind of application whereby I can help to almost shape, not necessarily decide, but have an opinion on it, and that fan-generated sports data becomes as important as actual official sports data. I mean, I often look at cricket, and if anyone's watched that, anyone's listening, they see WinViz, and WinViz is that pie chart that tells you what the outcome of the game might be based on that ball and that ball and that ball. That's fine, because that's based on historic data going back 100 and odd years from Wisden. But yeah, okay, but I'd like to always know what the fans think the outcome of the game is going to be based on what's going on in the game, because the psychology of that and how you feel is different to what the historical data tells us. Because the historical data, well, that's not going to change. It is what it is, right? Changes over time, but ultimately that's almost decided. But sport isn't like that. There's jeopardy in sport. The outcomes do change. You get the England team that all of a sudden Ben Stokes goes and whacks a century, and like, where did that come from? And again, when the team was dead and buried, it happens all the time, and I think fans have a part to play in that in terms of the interactivity they can have around that and to feel more immersed in the experience. So those are a few ideas of the spaces that we're trying to go, and then to a certain degree, we're bringing in really good people to the team. See where they want to take it as well. End of the day, I'm a conduit. Ultimately, we want people to feel inspired in the team to come up with the next big ideas for this business.
Because and I'd say there's a lot of ideas there that you're thinking about and trying to formalise. And you recently part of an accelerator program, right? Yes. So that must be an amazing place, like an incubator, to be throwing these ideas around. Yeah, amazing.
Look, that Comcast have thought to do something like this. We're the 4th year cohort of this. Sky, obviously part of the Comcast family, and Sky, because we've worked with them for a number of years, very much like, this is something that could be right for you. So applied for it, went through a very stringent 6-month process of pitching, presenting, the information we had to supply. One of 10 companies from around the world that were picked to be part of the cohort. So we've already been over to Orlando about a month ago, met the other 9 companies, met the partners who are in it. So you've got like PGA Golf and NASCAR, all of the Comcast, NBC, Sky family. And not just the fact that, we get instant access to decision makers, but those decision makers also give us their opinion on our business model, our products, what can be improved, what can we do better. We get mentors through the program as well, that senior people from senior organisations around the world that just, again, unguarded and just very open with you about how they think we should be doing things. But also, what I found as well, total respect for what we've done as well and what we do. Like, it feels mutual. There's no talking down as part of it. It's a very, very open environment. So Emma and I, my colleague, were going out in May, and they call it the Combines, where a little bit like the NFL Combines, where we're all pitching every single partner about what we can do for them for 2 days straight, half an hour at a time, pitch for 2 days. And then while we're out there, they take us to the PGA Golf, they take us to see the NASCAR. They're giving us access to experiences as well, but I think to try and, it's fun. So I'm not going to argue that it's not fun, but I think it's there to inspire us in terms of what's possible and try and get a depth and knowledge of those sports as well in a way we wouldn't normally get it. Like when we went to the PGA Golf, went to the Arnold Palmer Invitational in Orlando, well, just we went to the golf, they took us behind the scenes in the broadcast fans, and we met the digital team, the people who are running how content's created behind the scenes for PGA, so you get some real insights and like, the detail they went to in fireside chats and things like that. So look, it's really inspiring. Comcast now part owners, so this, also the biggest media company in the world. They're up there with Disney in terms of being the biggest media company in the world. They're a part shareholder in the business now as well. So it's also in their vested interest to help us to progress. And I think that was part of the idea of the accelerator is we'll help you to grow, and we've got skin in the game to make sure that if you do grow, then we benefit from that as well. And we're totally on board with that.
Wow, incredible. And look, last question, and I'll let you get out of here. For anybody who has an idea and wants to build it and create something, what advice would you give them?
Steal a phrase from Nike, because obviously I'm a massive Nike sneaker, just do it. Yeah. But I think don't be afraid. Use your network as well. I mean, I'm picking people's brains on a daily basis. Friends who, again, you make your own luck, right? But I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing people down the years in different organisations who are still staying in touch with now, who I'm not afraid to go, this might seem like a silly idea or a harebrained scheme, but what do you think if I did this or that or the other? And they'll be honest enough to tell me. So really use your network and run stuff by people as often as you can. He's probably the best advice I would give myself, even going back a few years where I didn't feel like I was doing it quite enough. And over the last few years I've done it, I've lent into it more, and actually I've seen the benefits of doing it, because in a lot of ways in my mind it de-risks the decisions that I make. And it's that, look, you want to be fearless, but the reality is you've always got a fear in the back of your mind. But I think if you can run it past enough people whose opinion you trust, and not just people who will agree with you as well, right? People who say, no, I don't think that would work. And if you can get to a consensus where it feels like the right thing, whether it's a success or a failure thereafter, at least you went into it with the right mindset, that you feel like you've done your own due diligence about why you should go and do something. So look, I know it's easy to say that, just do it, but I think use the network that you've got. Now I understand that's hard for maybe younger people just starting out, but look, often people reach out to me on LinkedIn and will ask my opinions on things, and I might not know them. I'll always give my time, because I think that's important. And just to say this as well, look, we're originally a Norwegian company. We're very much a Manchester business now. I'm from the northwest of England. I'm very proud of where we're from. I'm lucky enough that I take Dizplai out to the world. I tell everyone around the world that Manchester is the cultural capital of the United Kingdom, which I think it is. I think anyone in Manchester who is looking to, they've got an idea, they've got a business, they're doing different things, and they want to get a sense of how we do things, I'm always open. So hit me up on LinkedIn. Always happy to share the benefit of my experience if I can.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a really great chat. And yeah, can't wait to see where Dizplai are in the next 12 to 18 months.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next one.